Well, good morning, everybody. Pastor Bob here with Crossroads Online this wonderful Sunday morning. As I have shared many times, I've been quite vulnerable that I wrestle with anxiety and depression, and I have most of my life. Truth is, I believe that many of us, and to some extent, that probably most of us, if not all of us, do exactly the same thing. Maybe not in the same areas or for the same reasons, but I feel that many of us wrestle with anxiety and depression in our lives, and that many times it's the result of the world that we live in, coupled with the way that we process how we think. What's happening around us, who our friends are, who we want to be friends with or friends not, whom can we trust, what should I believe, and so forth. It can be our economic situation, or maybe a disability. I think you get the point. It's a wide span of anxiety where it can be, and so forth. Like addiction, that can be almost anything. There are many reasons for all of us to become anxious and even depressed, and that's the point. Andrew Newberg, MD, in his book titled How God Changes Your Brain, writes that contemplating God will change your brain. But then he goes on to say that meditating on other grand themes, he calls them, grand themes, can also have the same result. For example, learning a craft, something you do with your hands, building something, creating something, or learning to play an instrument. These change the neural circuitry in a way that promotes cognitive health. However, he writes this: religious and spiritual contemplation changes your brain in a profoundly different way. Did you catch that? Religious and spiritual contemplation changes your brain in a profoundly different way because it strengthens a unique neural circuit that specifically enhances social awareness and empathy while subduing destructive feelings and emotions. It's made me think of Paul, what he wrote in his letter to the Christians, the church there in Rome, and he writes this in Romans 12:2. He said, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world. Now, that means that we have been conforming to the world. Otherwise, Paul wouldn't say, stop conforming to the world. It meant they were conforming to the world, and probably even as the church or as Christians continued to conform to the ways of the world. So he writes, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Friends, I believe that we're talking about the same thing. And it all revolves around what we are choosing to think about and allowing to occupy our minds and even our hearts. Paul wrote to the church at Philippi saying this, and this is Philippians 4:6. He said, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. To which a few verses later, he says, here's the important part. And it's all about how we think. And Paul's purpose is saying here, and it's Philippians 4 again, it's verse 8, he said, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. I believe Newberg, like Paul, is saying the same thing, and that it is to be aware of what occupies our thoughts. In other words, be careful what you think. Be careful what you allow to consume your mind and your heart. Weigh every thought and bring every thought before the Lord, before the Word of God. Weigh it against the Word of God. This is how we begin the process of being renewed. We take it to God, as I said a couple of these devotions ago for prayer. But our relationship with God here is important, but also our relationship to His Word that is a guide to how we're supposed to live. Because being renewed, or renewing our heart, renewing the way that we think, renewing our mind, that's the opposite of being conformed. In this life, we either conform or we become renewed, is what Newberg is saying. Paul is saying exactly the same thing. And I also believe that D.L. Moody said the same thing, because I believe it was him who said that character is who you are in the dark, which basically means if I'm going through a dark time or I'm in a bad place in my life, then it's important to me how I think, not only about my situation, but about myself. And that others that may see me are going to look at me of how I am in the dark. Therefore, my renewing, my process of who I'm supposed to be is my character in that dark place. Now, today we are certainly in a dark place. Again, listen to what Andrew Newberg said about destructive feelings and emotions. He said, they get subdued when we change the way we think. That there's a neural circuit that specifically enhances our social awareness and empathy while subduing destructive feelings and emotions. In other words, we're more aware of what's happening around us, but we know what to do about it. We know how to think about it. We know where to take it. So it subdues destructive feelings and emotions. So again, Paul says to us, it's important that we renew the way we think, to renew our mind, to be anxious for nothing. But then he gives us a way to do that, and he says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. My closing question is this. As a young boy growing up, I used to hear my parents say these words to me all the time. You've probably heard the same things. What were you thinking? Especially when I did something wrong, when I was bad, when I made a bad choice, wrong decision. What were you thinking? Let me ask that question of us today. As children of God, called to love both God and neighbor, what are you thinking? Seriously, where are your thoughts? Where is your mind, your heart? This is Pastor Bob with Crossroads Online. We love you. We hope you're staying home, staying safe, and staying healthy. Any questions, please contact me. We love you. God bless.
You are worthy, Lord.